Welcome to One Bite is Everything, the podcast that connects every bite you take to the bigger world. I'm your host, Dana DiPrima. Here we talk with thought leaders who shape the way we eat, live, and connect. Because food isn't just food. It's health and community, the environment, and the economy, all on your plate. Today's episode starts in a place many of you might recognize, home. Boston. A full life with kids, a busy calendar, and then a moment of pause, because it was a transition moment, and that moment was compounded by COVID. Because when COVID hit, something didn't add up. Food was being wasted, people were going hungry, and even for those with access, fresh, nutrient-dense food suddenly felt really fragile. That disconnect sparked a question that would change everything. What if we stopped participating in the system and started rebuilding it? My guest today, Jeanne Blasberg, didn't just ask that question. She acted on it. She and her husband left behind their life in Boston and bought a 500-acre farm, Flynn Creek Farm, outside Madison, Wisconsin. What started as a fantasy that many of you have had, if you care to admit it, and an environmental instinct quickly became something way bigger. Today, they're building a working model of what a regenerative farm can be: vegetables, livestock, soil restoration, a direct partnership with a fast casual restaurant chain, a growing ecosystem of retail, value-added products, and community engagement, and a real-time experiment in what it actually takes to make local food work at scale. But this isn't a romantic "we bought a farm" story. This is about tension. The tension between seasonality and consistency, soil health and profit margins, local ideals and industrial infrastructure. Because what Jeanne is uncovering is something we don't talk enough about. It's not that people don't want local food. It's that our entire system isn't built to support it. In fact, over 90% of fruits and vegetables in the United States move through industrial supply chains designed for uniformity, not proximity. And small farms, they capture only a fraction of the food dollar. So, the question becomes, can you build something different inside a system that wasn't designed for it? And what does it really take to make that work? This is a conversation about reinvention, about friction, and about what happens when you try to connect the dots between how food is grown and how it's actually eaten.
In 2026, this will be our fourth growing season as a veggie livestock production on this farm. Before us, it was your basic soy corn rotation.
Was it conventionally grown?
It was organic. However, the guy who owned the property leased it out to a farmer. And he is a really well-known, wonderful organic farmer, but lived like an hour away. So he would be having to drive his combine and his tractors. Took so much time for him to get back and forth to this property. So as a result, he did very few passes. And the farm just is like rocks and weeds and not that well cultivated. And then the soil health, there was just degradation. He didn't do continual cover cropping. And so there was nothing sprayed, but there was a lot of erosion and it was rough. It is still rough in parts.
I'm curious about what came before the farm and then where that light switch was that you found that made you go look for one.
So before the farm, let's see, I have had so many different careers. Most recently, before the farm, I was part of this literary community. I published 3 novels. We lived in Boston then, and I was writing, and I was on the board of a creative writing center and involved with the Boston Book Festival and also just raising my kids. And I was also the chairperson of the U.S. Squash Association. So that's a big national governing body with an effort of getting squash in the Olympics and the whole thing. So I was the first female chair of that organization, and I'm a competitive squash player. So like my life revolved around writing, my kids, my sport, advocating for my sport, and traveling a lot for that. But also we had a fairly busy social life in Boston. My husband's from downtown Boston, and my in-laws lived around the corner from us. So I had this very vibrant family life with my kids and my in-laws. And then during COVID, my in-laws both passed, and my kids were launched and not living at home and really expressed no interest to really come back to Boston. And in all honesty, I was just sort of feeling for a number of years that I was living a life that was like their life, that I fit into this family and I fit into this neighborhood and I attended certain events and shared things and was all wrapped up in the community in a way that wasn't really me. But whenever we'd be outside the city, and my family has a summer tradition down in Rhode Island, so not too far away, I had my own vegetable garden. And in the summers, I would grow vegetables just like 10 times as much as anybody in my family could consume. And I had such joy out of delivering things to my friends and also just really feeding everyone I could from our garden. I just felt like that was this amazing feeling. And then when COVID hit, and I was faced with the challenge of getting fresh produce and food, and then the hunger in Boston. And then when, there was food accessible, it wasn't fresh, it was like processed food.
When COVID hit, it didn't just disrupt access to food, it exposed a structural flaw in how our entire food system operates. In cities like Boston, food insecurity didn't spike because there wasn't enough food overall, but because the system is built for efficiency, not resilience. At the height of the pandemic, Feeding America estimated that food insecurity in the United States affected over 54 million people, an increase of nearly 40%. Yet farmers were simultaneously dumping millions of pounds of fresh produce due to supply chain breakdowns. The disconnect is stark. Nutrient-dense food was being wasted while communities were left with shelf-stable, ultra-processed options. This matters because diets high in processed foods are directly linked to increased risks of chronic illness, including obesity, diabetes, and heart disease, conditions that notably also worsened COVID outcomes. What we witnessed wasn't just a temporary crisis, but a revelation. Our food system prioritizes scale, shelf life, and profit margins over human nourishment. The real issue isn't scarcity. It's distribution, infrastructure, and a lack of investment in localized regenerative food networks that can withstand disruption and actually feed people in a way that supports long-term health.
So my husband has spent his entire career as a consultant and most of his career to consumer products companies and packaged food companies, macaroni and cheese, cookies, chocolate, everything. So he was like, I've got to quit. Like, I feel shitty about myself. This started out as consumer products like batteries and this and that. And now it's just like a lot of this food crap. We were both just talking a lot about the food system. And it really just was really highlighted the efforts we went to get fresh produce during that spring of COVID of 2020. I'm like, first of all, we have means. We know people who are sending us emails about where you can get this and where you can get that. But most people can't get anything. And there's nothing available. Like, the regional food system just seems so screwed up. So it was about that time I also had a existential thing. Like, we're selling that house in Boston. I was spending so much time taking care of a historic house in a historic neighborhood. And I'm like, it's not me. That's not who I am. And when we sold that and really sold a lot of our possessions, we kind of hit the road and drove out west. It was then around Thanksgiving of 2020, and we had been sequestering for months with our kids in this place in Rhode Island, and I was losing it. But at that time, we had also come to this agreement and had these conversations that really were pushing us that we need more purpose in our life. Our kids are healthy, they're launched, they still need advice and some love every once in a while, but thank God they're healthy and they're good. John's parents were gone, and my dad and my stepmother are pretty self-sufficient. So we were in this really amazing opportunity where we didn't need to be where we were. We could go anywhere. We had our health, and we're both relatively young and have good health and energy. And then we have some resources, which we're redeployed. Like we got out of a lot of those trappings that sort of defined our earlier life. And as we were on the road heading west and sort of wanting to spend the winter where we could be outside a lot more in the mountains, we stopped all over the place looking at farmland. And we had seen that documentary, Kiss the Ground, during COVID. And I said, we just need to buy some farmland, keep it covered, no till, like we'll just own it and just keep it from getting tilled. And he was like, that's not really going to work. I mean, you need to grow something and you need to manage the land. I was so naive. Anyway, we looked at land all over the place and we're like, well, we don't really know how to farm, but maybe we could hire someone who would farm this land for us. And then it became clear that you couldn't really hire a farmer until you had the land to show them that you were going to farm. And we didn't know anybody in these communities. So it was just this chicken and an egg problem. But we did go out and voice our desire to buy a farm to just about anybody who would listen to us and our desire to change our lives a lot. In the meantime, John became the head of sustainability at his consulting firm. So he gave up all those other clients. And we were at a 4th of July cookout, and an old family friend who was a chef in Madison, Wisconsin, mentioned that he wanted to stop cooking and become a farmer. And I was like, are you kidding me? Did someone put you up to that, to just come over here and tell me that? Because everybody I'm talking to is like, why don't you just buy a farm in Rhode Island? And John and I sort of felt like if we were going to make a difference in the world, it wasn't to be another organic veggie grower in a place that has a lot of them. We were looking at farmland that was at risk of topsoil erosion and ruination. And I was really looking at this more as an environmental thing. But John, with his like consumer products and retail background, a light went off when this young man started telling us about his passions, his ties to the community in Madison, and even made an introduction to us to Forage Kitchens, which is this fast casual chain of restaurants. So we met the founder and spent about a year getting to know him. And he was really interested in a connection to my husband because he has a lot of background in consulting to these kinds of companies, like much bigger companies. But we really saw a lot of amazing qualities, both in this founder and in Forage Kitchens, which now has 9 locations between Madison and Milwaukee. And it's a fast casual bowl type concept. And they were really hoping to purchase all their local organic vegetables when possible, because of the season in Wisconsin. It's not always possible 12 months a year based on their menu, but from a proprietary farm. So for about a year, we were in conversations of what that might look like and looking at property. And Henry, the founder, would come around and look at farms with us. And we made an investment in the restaurant chain, and John sits on the board and sort of started mentoring Henry. But I think one thing that's really unique and got us really excited is that there's not a lot of vertically integrated farm to fork concepts where we have this partnership. And over the last 3 seasons, it started off with all these great intentions, but it's something we've had to continually work on because there's this tension between keeping costs low and the margins at a suitable level in a fast casual, very traditional scenario where you have to keep operations lean, you need ease of menu. You can't just change the menu based on what we have on the farm. They really need consistency. Their labor isn't sometimes very well educated. So it's not like a white tablecloth restaurant where you can call them and say, I have beets this week. Would you like to run a special? So we're really trying to replicate in a lot of ways, whether it's delivery, ordering, even like the consistency of the product we bring them. We're trying to keep that almost conventional and mimicking what you would get if you ordered from Sysco or US Foods. Like they know we're coming on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We're now developing this app that they can order with that makes it really easy for their folks in the kitchen. So it's been a really interesting experience thinking, well, they'll just, take all that we grow. Well, they can't do that. And it's really highlighted for me the challenges in the food system where big grocery chains and stores and things that really have to have consistency and high volume, why they continually source from California and Arizona and Mexico and not from their local regional food system.
What actually started as a seemingly idealistic pivot from chef to farmer actually cuts straight to one of the most overlooked tensions in our food system: the near impossibility of aligning local regenerative agriculture with the rigid demands of modern retail and food service. On paper, farm to table sounds simple. In reality, it's trying to reconcile two completely different systems, one driven by seasonality, variability, and ecology, and the other by consistency, scale, and razor-thin margins. In the United States, over 90% of fruits and vegetables are sourced through industrial supply chains, largely because distributors like Sysco and US Foods can guarantee uniformity, year-round availability, and price stability, something that local farms, especially in climates like Wisconsin, structurally cannot. Even fast casual restaurants, which market themselves as fresh and local, operate on margins as low as 6 to 9%, leaving little room for variability or risk. What this story reveals is that the barrier to local food isn't just consumer demand, it's infrastructure. Kitchens are trained for predictability, menus are engineered for operational efficiency, and supply chains are optimized for distance, not proximity. So even when there's genuine desire from founders or farmers or communities to build something more connected and sustainable, they're forced to mimic the very industrial systems they're trying to replace just to survive. The deeper insight here is that without rethinking not just how we grow food, but how we distribute, price, and design menus around it, local will continue to be more of a branding exercise than a functional reality at scale.
Within the little universe of Madison, we are really working on helping not only our farm, but helping to fix some of these things in the food system. So sort of being some of the first people to create these computer platforms for ordering that then can get used by smaller farms or one-off restaurants. And that's been really exciting. So we really started with this vegetable emphasis and with forage, but the year-round growing and having all this land to manage, we were continuing with what the farmer before us had done. We did organic corn and then organic soy, but it was so hard because we were contracting with a local farmer who had the equipment and had the combine, and it would rain when he was planning to come to us. And you can't weed organically unless the conditions are just right. So we just made the decision, and I was like taking out crop insurance and doing the whole government subsidy thing. And really, in talking to the guy who used to farm, Mark Dudla, and others, our land is really well suited for grazing. It's hilly. There's some slopes that just don't do field crops well. And we have a lot of forest, which is great silvopasture for the animals to find shelter. And so we're doubling down on growing our herd of Black Angus and our sheep. And then this year we're introducing chickens to follow in behind those animals. They're intensively grazed, and then to pick the grubs out of the manure so that we don't have as many flies and things like that. But we're really thinking that that is an opportunity for healthy food for humans. So in the last year, we've renovated the barn on the property to be more of a community gathering space. And we're going to have a farm stand, like a farm store there this year, and be doing more retail sales. We're going to beef up our presence at farmers markets for more retail sales because even though forage is a great customer, they're a great baseline of about $100,000 in revenue a year. The margins aren't that great because it's wholesale pricing, and we're trying to help them keep their prices at a certain level and hope that this whole story of integrating with our farm is something that really helps on the marketing side for both of us. We're getting a lot of benefit from the recognition that's giving us locally, but we're seeing we have to have some retail sales mixed in there. So this year we'll be doing some modified CSA where you buy a gift card, and if you bought it before March 1st, I gave you an extra 10% value on the gift card, and you can come whenever you want to our farm store and use it on whatever you want. So there's this benefit of buying it early and paying before the season starts, so we have a sense of what our volume might be. You know, your typical CSA is you get what you get every week, and this is more get what you want whenever you want it. And so we're trying that, and we made an estimate of how many people we thought would sign up, and we had over twice as many households sign up and over, twice as much dollars come in. So that was really exciting. We're growing, and we have two herbalists on our team now, and we're trying some medicinal products, whether it's soaps or salves or bath teas. We also expanded into value-added products. So we have a line of tomato-based, we have garden sauce, we're developing a Bloody Mary mix, we have a romesco sauce, we have a really great umami pickle, we have beet poke. So we have this line called Flynn Creek Flavor, which is great because when we have overage, if we don't have an outlet for beet, like we grow a lot of beets because they can store throughout the winter. We have a great outlet now that's more of a consumer product. And you can see that was John, my husband's influence. He's always dreamed of his own line. Our daughter is in the advertising world and does a lot of branding work. So she's helped with our label and our messaging around our refrigerated products. And then this guy we hired as a consultant, he's got a lot of experience with developing recipes and developing these kinds of products. He's constantly, we're working on a salsa verde and a chimichurri and other things like that. I think we're going to have a hot sauce coming out this year because Forage used to have a local hot sauce that they couldn't get anymore. So we're doing that for them. But between the animals and the spreading of the compost and the vegetable production, I feel like year 3, we're doing a good job of continually moving towards that regenerative system. And we're doing some biodynamic practices as well. The extra acreage that came with this farm next door, combined with our farm, we have an incredible trail system. So when folks come to buy at our farm store, they can also walk almost 600 acres of trails if they want to hang out for the day, bring a picnic or something. So we're trying to incorporate both with like a handful of farm dinners each year and inviting the community to be a part of like learning about the farm, an educational component as well.
Small farms in the United States capture only about 14 to 17 cents of every food dollar, with the rest absorbed by processing, distribution, and retail. By creating products like sauces, herbal goods, and on-site experiences, they're reclaiming more of that value while reducing waste from surplus crops. Even the shift toward community integration, like farm stores, trails, and dinner, isn't just aesthetic. It's a reimagining of the farm as a cultural and economic hub, not just a production site. We have seen that regenerative agriculture alone isn't enough. It has to be paired with regenerative business models. Otherwise, even the most ecologically sound farms will struggle to survive inside a system that still rewards scale, uniformity, and extraction over diversity, adaptability, and connection.
We started out with 4 principles that make up our mission statement. And it's one of those things where we're not breaking even yet. And I don't know if these 4 principles can coexist in a profitable enterprise, but our goal really is to not have this be a vanity project and have this be a model for how a medium-sized farm could operate so that others might replicate it, because we don't think regenerative farming is scalable, but it is replicatable. So our first thing that we want to do is give young farmers career opportunities and pay them a living wage with benefits, give them professional development and an opportunity to do what they love. And as we're developing more in our governance and our team is getting built out with people who are really great, a path to ownership for them as well. And then the second principle is to improve the topsoil and add organic matter back into our topsoil and create the most in that topsoil, then the most nutrient dense food possible. And then to serve that nutrient dense food in a delicious and affordable way for most people. So Forage Kitchen's average ticket is probably $12 or $13, which competes, if you read all about these bowl franchises right now and the pressure to keep the prices down and the margins any good. But we really want Forage to be competitive with, or a better choice than other fast food in your neighborhood. We sort of made a decision, or Forage has as a company, to expand throughout Wisconsin. And, Chicago is alluring and Minneapolis is alluring. But there are a lot of underserved markets where the rent's not that high and people don't have that many options. So we're really hoping to make a difference. In Wisconsin, which is mostly an agricultural state, only 3% of the farmland goes to growing food for humans. Communities, the Quick Trip, which is the local gas station, is your grocery store. A lot of people are like, why'd you end up in Wisconsin? And it was like one conversation led to the next. And this opportunity presented itself, and this farm became available for purchase that was within a really close distance. I mean, outside of the city of Madison, but close enough so that we could attract people for events, attract labor, young folks who live in Madison maybe, or live close to Madison. I don't know. It was like, once we put this out there, not immediately, but help and validation started coming from different areas. And it's a really incredible foodie culture that's accepting and supportive and encouraging of repairing the food system. So, yeah. And then we just met wonderful people. So the people at Forage, even though we have some tension with pricing, I think that it's an amazing relationship where we both see the grander vision. And if we can fight to make this work and figure out what's the formula for selling local organic food with traditional distribution, I think we will have not completely solved things, but sort of to address the problem that's really out there, where people who order and work in grocery stores and kitchens are like, look, I just need to look in my freezer and see what I need at 11 o'clock at night and order it and know it's coming tomorrow. It's like, well, I know we live in an Amazon world where you just push order and everything shows up the next day, but we're finding that there's interest on the menu to have a menu of things that's just local and seasonal, and to start training our customers and our diners that, hey, in October in Wisconsin, you're not eating avocados. You're actually never eating avocados. So how about some butternut squash and some beets and some, we have plenty of arugula and spinach. We can make your bowl out of stuff like that. That's what's coming from our farms at this time of year.
Well, it's such an important conversation to have, because if they're not willing to have it, people aren't going to know, because we are in a modern society where things happen at a click and there's food in my fridge, and the luxury of not thinking is so central to where we've ended up. I also think the idea of looking at these lesser markets with only the gas station is super smart in terms of, well, success, right?
We're not going to compete with Sweetgreens in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Is that sort of the level of Forage?
Yeah.
So for Forage and for enterprises like that, consistency, having things show up and pretty immediately, having access to it, are those the biggest price point? Those are the biggest
it was
issues?
crazy. So well, the first season we delivered to them, it was, I'd say, our pilot year. We were a little slow getting off the ground, getting all our permits and our greenhouse up. but we were delivering, I think, once or twice a week to them. And then if someone in the kitchen was like, oh my God, we're out of salad mix, they would just order it from Cisco. So we realized we needed to deliver very regularly. And then it was like, oh, you bring these big totes, and because we didn't want to use plastic, so we have reusable totes. And they're like, oh, the totes are too big for our cooler. So like we go into their, at the end of the season, we go into a kitchen of, and they're all somewhat different sizes, which is annoying. But we're like, okay, so would it be better if we just bagged things and then you could take it out of the tote? And yeah, that would be so much better. Oh, and we're spending all this time peeling our scallions, and it turns out you just cut them up. So like there's a lot of understanding in how they're using our stuff, what we can do ahead of time. So we're almost overwashing and prepping things that a normal farm would do because we know it's going to forage and it saves them some time. And then we get a little bit of the benefit of that cost. So it's really like understanding their operations really well. They have a store in the Milwaukee Public Market, which is sort of like a Quincy market or something. And they do a lot of juices and smoothies there. They don't care what the carrots look like. Like for forage, everything's getting chopped up. So it's also nice because we can send them ugly stuff, what might be seconds on another farm they can use. So it's both ways, like learning what's really important to them. This year, we're going to start taking their food scraps from their kitchens, not from their customers' garbage, but from the kitchen prep, bringing it back into our composting program. So we're really working very closely with them in terms of these opportunities.
What's really unfolding here is a shift in power. Who adapts to whom in the food system? Even in a partnership built on shared values, the farm ends up bending toward the logic of the restaurant. Speed, convenience, cost control. That's not a failure. It's a reflection of where leverage sits. Kitchens operate under intense pressure, and whoever can reduce friction wins. So the farm that preps, packages, and delivers exactly how the kitchen needs becomes indispensable, even if it means taking on more labor and complexity. That's where the opportunity hides. By embedding themselves this deeply, farms stop being interchangeable suppliers and start becoming strategic partners. It's less about selling carrots and more about becoming part of the kitchen's operating system. In a system where most suppliers are commoditized, that kind of integration is what actually creates staying power and influence over time.
Our produce manager, before he started working on our farm, he had his own farm, and he is the most passionate advocate for soil health and organic farming. So we were lucky enough to recruit him to work for us. But when Forage starts pushing on like, this costs, 10 cents too much, or you need to bag this differently, he's like, I don't like working with this company. But my husband's like, look, they're a business too. Like, let's think about it from their point of view. There's certain things that we can concede, but there's certain things that we can also demand. And so let's figure out how this is going to work, because like, think about the greater mission here. And we're starting to test our vegetables in a lab. It's sort of expensive, but just getting data on the nutrient density of our food versus food that's been traveling in a truck for 3 weeks. I mean, it doesn't take rocket scientists to know what the results of that test is, but it's proven results. And also just the benefit of our veggies versus what you can buy in the grocery store, because that's basically the same as what came off the truck. So I'm very much in the nitty gritty. Like I am there when the manure guy comes, or dealing with the payroll and people having a sick day and how are we going to staff the store. And my husband is great because he's really a strategic thinker and he keeps us on the big picture, where I can get dragged into like, oh, the fence guy didn't show up and we have this power problem and our well needs that. So I'm a little bit more of the general contractor and supervisor of all the things you need to build and get put in place. Hopefully the building stage of this farm will start coming to an end. But he really keeps us at this higher level. What if we grew this? And it's like, oh, we can't grow that. It's good. We make a really good team because I am more the day to day and he's the chairman. And I would say the strategy, and he has the closest relationship with Forage since he sits on the board and he has the ear of folks there. Not that what we want always happens, but we're constantly advocating for what a good story is.
Well, I like what you said earlier about like there are tensions, but it seems that all of those tensions sort of get worked through in conversation, whereas there are a lot of relationships that have more distance where the tensions never have an opportunity to become a
Yeah.
possibility or a
Yeah.
change, or you don't like our bags. Oh my gosh, we thought of those bags for you and now they're not working for you. So,
Yeah.
those kind of relationships are
Yeah.
so important.
And after the first season, they were like, we really didn't like the quality of your romaine. And we're like, well, you know why? Because this is not the environment in which romaine is grown well. So we just decided we're not going to grow romaine, but we can grow spinach, arugula, other salad mixes. If you want romaine, because you have to have a crunchy, whitish lettuce, buy it from Arizona. We
Yeah.
really grow delicious cilantro and basil and peppers and cucumbers and tomatoes out the wazoo. So there's a lot of things we grow well. And we decided, even by taking things off that we aren't that well suited to grow, we're still delivering about 25 different varieties to them, whether it's green onions or fennel. We have such delicious fennel. We just have all sorts of things we grow for them. And it's them listening to Kyle, our manager, of like, what can you grow well in these conditions here? And
That's such a
uh,
unique conversation for this sort of mid-tier kind of.
yeah, they'd be like, we want broccoli. And he's like, I'm not growing another brassica. I already grow kale and I can't afford to get this disease. And if you grow too many brassicas, you're very susceptible to this. And the people who own this like healthy, fast casual concept are like, oh, I had no idea. Why don't you do sweet potatoes? It's like sweet potatoes are a pain in the ass. Why don't you switch your recipe to include butternut squash? It basically tastes the same. So we have all of these really good conversations that educational on both sides.
I want to be in that room when those, why don't you grow this? Well, no, why don't you eat this? It's so good. It's so good.
Well, we've really tried to influence their menu developer, and it's been like a rotating door of menu people. And I don't even think they have one right now.
Hmm.
But yeah, you're in constant fear of some hipster coming in and deciding to change the menu when we've already planted everything. That happened one year. It's just like, you guys don't get it. When you want something in August, we need to know in January. So we buy the seeds and it's in our rotational plan. So we start picking the produce they want for this summer and spring back in November. Like, we really need to think this through. And then if we have a huge bumper crop of cucumbers or tomatoes, that's why those go in a lot of our value added foods. But we're like, you need to have limited time offers. If we call you and say there's going to be an excess of something, then let's start thinking of a limited time offer. So for the last 2 summers, there's been a Flynn Greek salad, which is sort of a takeoff on the Flynn Creek name. And we do the tomatoes and the cucumbers in the Greek salad.
The thing that I'm hearing too is that all of this is doable if people are willing on both sides to just understand the other side. So if they don't like your bag, you can make a shift. And if they want a particular vegetable, they just need
Yeah.
to think about it a little bit
Yeah,
earlier
let's
than they
think
might.
through or through the menu a little. We're just really trying to help them think through everything that's on that line. And it's crazy, even foodies not totally knowing where everything comes from.
Now, what do you know about their plans in terms of expansion?
So there's a store in Brookfield, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Milwaukee, coming online in the next few weeks. And everything's internally funded. So what can get thrown off from operations plus some additional fundraising rounds from the people on the capitalization table. The plan is to open a couple of new stores a year, getting to a size of about 20 locations or maybe more. I think going into some of these smaller markets, that's our next testing ground. And I think that's something everyone's in favor of, but That hasn't been tested yet. It makes a lot of sense because, well, the rents that you pay in Madison and Milwaukee are going to be a lot larger than the rents you pay in a smaller market. The volume might be smaller in a smaller market, but I do think they'll be profitable. I think the word on the street is still the goal is around the 20 location mark.
Mm-hmm.
And then the goal is also to keep it private for as long as possible and not take like venture money or, every founder is going to want an exit strategy and sell at some point, but we'll see. Hopefully the Forage brand will be so woven in with local organic by then. And that's a big part of their local marketing strategy that won't mean like the end of our relationship, but also we are starting to diversify our revenue stream. Once we got up to the capacity vegetable wise, where we were satisfying every order that Forage needed and never shorting them, now we have another really big tomato account and we're going to be growing for market and for our farm stand. And with this app that we're creating, whatever Forage doesn't take falls down into an open marketplace. So hopefully that will also attract new wholesale customers.
You say that the app would then be also available for other farms to use with their customers?
Yeah. So the app is called the Maize app, Maize, if you want to check it out. Right. It started out as an app that consumers could use when they go into restaurants to really see what on the menu, where things come from. But what they really want to do is become this ordering app that facilitates the relationship between the grower and the wholesaler or the restaurant. And so we are sort of the pilot because we represent sales to 9 different locations and we have a very steady relationship. So I don't think there are many other farms in our area that have like a brother-sister relationship like we do, where we can all work together to develop this app that suits both sides of the table. Most farms are like at always this tenuous relationship with all their customers, and none of the restaurants would say to a farm, you're going to be our one and only farm. So there's the security in the relationship and the scale in the relationship that allows us to help Maize pilot this app and get it. Like we really teach them a lot about what a farmer needs and what would make our life easier, and then Forage the same thing. And it's great. It's going to launch on April 1st. We'll be doing test ordering at our Sun Prairie location, and then Forage starts ordering in full force from us like mid-May. We ramp up the salad greens and a lot of the herbs for them. And yeah, hopefully we'll have all 9 locations on that app by then.
And how big is the team for the farm?
We have 4 people who are full-time year-round. That's Kyle, our produce manager. Amos is our livestock manager. Kyle now has an assistant manager in produce, and there's a young man named Milo who is the youngest and most inexperienced. He's out of the University of Wisconsin and has really helped us with our composting, biochar, worm castings, but he's also my analyst in the winter because he has an interest in, he actually might go and work for Maize if Maize starts making enough money. He's voiced that he'd rather be on like the computer side of the food system. And so we're supporting that wholeheartedly. At any time, there's like 4 or 5 people full-time year-round. And I always encourage, even our wash pack person, Becca, I want her to get the benefits. She can be on the 401k if she's full-time year-round. Sometimes they just want to work hourly because they think they're going to make more in the season. Anyway, I'm constantly feeling like I'm the mother hen. Like, I think you really need the benefits and start saving for your retirement. But they don't believe me. And then I guess we probably have about 10 people who are seasonal hourly.
Yeah, it sounds like you have learned a tremendous amount since your days in Boston, thinking of this as a dream.
Yeah, and I thought I could just like fly in and fly out and like walk around my farm. And yeah, that was a stupid thing to think. Just stupid.
Let's just go back to Boston for a second. what are the moms and the squash friends and all of the people that you were involved with back there? What's their reaction to all of this?
It's funny because last September we had our first small retreat on the farm, and it was mostly friends and family. They were our guinea pigs. But a handful of my close friends came from Boston, and I think they were impressed and somewhat shocked by how much I had learned and all that we were trying to do. Because it's not just like one crop, it's not like, oh, I'm just growing sunflowers and then I sell them at market. We're trying to create the system. So educating them about that. But I think my friends are seeing me pull the layers off and kind of live a life that I love. I don't resent that I'm spending the whole summer there and not going to Rhode Island or not, doing the things I used to do. I jump out of bed with such a feeling of we got to get all this stuff done today, and it's going to rain in 2 days, so we got to go hard today. And I love working with this team of young people. Anyway, I think my friends, there's probably a lot of people who sort of see my Substack posts and my Instagram posts and think, holy crap, I would have never dreamt that out of that person. But then they're like my close friends who know that I always loved to grow my own food, and I'm really passionate about organic and the healthfulness and the transparency around food. One example is my kids, because like we're spending their entire inheritance on this farm. Like, forget it, kids, there's nothing left for you. But they're so proud of us. They're so like excited that we're working so hard on something that could have a bigger impact on the world.
What Jeanne and her team are building is not just a farm. It's a test of whether a different kind of food system can actually function in the real world. Because what this conversation makes clear is that the barriers to local regenerative food aren't just on the farm. They're in restaurant kitchens that need consistency, supply chains built for speed and scale, pricing structures that leave little room for variability, and a culture that expects everything all the time. And yet, despite all of that, they're making it work. Not perfectly, not easily, but intentionally. They're adjusting packaging to fit kitchen workflows. They're planning crops months in advance to meet menu needs. They're turning surplus into value-added products. They're even building technology to bridge the gap between farms and restaurants. It's a reminder that change in our food system doesn't happen in big sweeping gestures. It happens in relationships, in conversations, in a willingness on both sides to adapt. And maybe most importantly, it happens when we, as eaters, start to understand what's behind the food on our plate. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's where the shift begins. Thanks for listening to One Bite is Everything, the podcast that connects every bite you take to the bigger world. Today's conversation sparked something for you. Remember, the stories that you hear here don't end when the episode does. Through the 4 Farmers movement, these stories become action, supporting small farmers and bringing eaters like you closer to the people who make your food possible. You can learn more at 4farmersmovement.com. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll take a moment to rate and review One Bite is Everything on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people like you find the show. Really, you can do it. It really would mean a lot to me. One Bite is Everything is in the top 3% of all podcasts globally, with more engagement than 88% of podcasts on Spotify, thanks to you. With over 150 episodes, we are committed to bringing you the stories that matter. This episode was co-produced by Sonia Dillon, with sound design and original music by Russell Chapa. I'm your host, Dana DiPrima, and I'll see you here again next week for another episode of One Bite is Everything. Until then, eat like it matters, because it does.